Hello, everyone. My name is Aseem Chabra. I'm the festival director of the New York Indian Film Festival. Welcome to this conversation on some of the Hindi films we are showing at the festival, Hindi feature films. But just to give you some brief information, the New York Indian Film Festival, this is our 21st year. It's a virtual festival because of the uncertainty by the COVID situation. The festivals will stream on NYIFF.moviesaints.com. You can see that right there. That's where you go to buy tickets at any point during the festival. And the festival runs from June 4th to June 13th. And we have many, many more films that people need to watch in 15 different languages spoken in India. So I'm going to just call the team that you're going to be watching, and then I'll go backstage. First of all, I'll call Ashok Vish. Hi, Ashok.
Hello.
So
Hi,
Ashok is a filmmaker and also a member of the programming committee of New York Indian Film Festival. He'll moderate today's session. And then we have three filmmakers. We have Ashish Pant. Ashish is the director of The Knot, Uljan. Ashish is the first-time filmmaker, right, Ashish?
That's right.
Then we have Sushant Jain, who's made the film called Tenant, The Tenant. Sushant, is this your first film or you made films before this?
No, I've made films before this. I made a feature-length documentary on the World Cup of Cricket.
Okay, so Ashok will talk to you about that. And last but not least, we have Suman Mukhopadhyay, who's the director of Captive, Nazarband. And Suman, this is your first Hindi film. Am I right about that?
Yes. Second. I thought it was second.
Yeah, actually, this is first one, but the second one which I made, that came out before Nazarband. So technically, this is first.
Okay. All right. So I'll leave it to you guys. Have a good conversation, and I'll be listening backstage, and Ashok will take it off from there. So enjoy, guys.
Thank you, Aseem, and welcome to all of you. And again, congratulations for being part of the film festival, and congratulations on all of your films. I guess we can dive right in. I think one of the most common questions the interviewers ask filmmakers is what inspired you to make the film, but I think that's something we can unpack along the way as we discuss other aspects of the film. So I guess I wanted to start off with the statement that, one of the common themes that I saw in all three of the films was class, and how women in particular are affected, portrayed, and perceived within these different class structures in all three of the films. So I was wondering if all of you could kind of talk about that and the importance of talking about class within your films. Whoever wants to start.
Ashish, would you like to go first?
Okay. Thanks, Shushu. Thanks, Ashok, for having me here. For me, there's a very interesting sort of linkage between patriarchy and class, I feel, or the class consciousness in our society. And, in The Knot, I've tried to explore it from the perspective of the female protagonist, where the story can be seen as one of becoming a mother as well for her. And the sort of the central motif that I'm exploring in my film is this idea of crossing borders and how we construct borders between us and rest of the society. And my film deals with sort of the middle and upper middle class perspective on that. And the car, I find, in developing countries is a very interesting sort of, it's almost like this metallic protective bubble, which allows a certain socioeconomic class to navigate the society sitting in the car. And when the door of the car opens and they step out or someone else steps in, the drama kind of begins. But how that's linked to sort of the woman's journey of becoming a mother for me is, if you think about the idea of giving birth is about opening up. And the whole idea of constructing barriers or borders between us and the others is about closing down. It's about closing doors, gates, windows, setting up walls. And so sort of way, I think if I were to sort of point to a linkage between the journey of the woman in my film versus class consciousness, I would say that's kind of the parallel I draw.
Great. And who would like to go next, Shushruth or Shuman?
Sure, I can go next. So The Tenant is a film that is set in middle class Mumbai, where I grew up, and I in fact was shot in the very apartment building in which I spent 15 years of my life, in Juhu. And the idea, class is definitely central. It is something that we wanted to explore. But at the same time, it really is about the patriarchal structure of Indian society, and the fact that even in a place like English speaking, Hindi speaking middle class Mumbai, in these cooperative housing societies, which kind of think of themselves as more progressive than the rest of the country, there still are these very strong unwritten rules of conduct that apply differently for women and differently for men. And there, surely, as you do get into different upper class strata, those rules may change, but they're very firmly entrenched in middle class society, especially the world that I grew up in. And my film is basically focusing on how a society, cooperative housing society, but how society in general deals with a woman who does not fit into the mold that they want her to, or someone her age, and someone who's unmarried and a certain age, and so on. And it's basically about society having to face that, and it's about a young boy growing up in that world and dealing, with what kind of person he wants to become, kind of.
Right.
Actually, from my very childhood, when I was actually, I used to live outside Kolkata in a smaller town rather, across the Ganges. So when I came to this metropolis of Kolkata as a young boy, I always felt that this Kolkata has been a kind of melting pot of so many things, like people from Bihar, from Orissa, from northeastern parts of India. They come together in the city in search of jobs, in search of opportunities. But I always felt this as a youngster, that from the very beginning, that there's some kind of, a kind of a thin line, or maybe a broad line of differentiation of economic situation, the class situation, and a Bihari in Kolkata or a Udia in Kolkata, they are different. So there is a kind of, we are, as a liberals, we are always, Kolkata is always in a culturally very forward city. We are called the cultural capital of India, but somehow with all this liberalism at the outset, finally what transpires, there is a line of differentiation, and which is very, which is subtle. That's the point, that when you cannot understand the subtle divisions which you make, and finally we are Bengalis, and there's a class division, and actually my characters are from rank and file. They are the immigrants in this city. They have come to look for a job. They've come to exist, and that's where I think that I posit my characters in that milieu, when the entire system, the modus operandi of a metropolis, of course, we talk about our cosmopolitan attitude, our sense of inclusion, but they always remain excluded from the mainstream. Somehow we cannot include them from deep inside. Technically, we are saying
women.
And then the woman factor comes also at the same time, that woman also faces a much deeper disconnect, in that way, because of the patriarchy, the model of patriarchy, which everybody has mentioned, and how we have arranged ourselves in our class divisions, in our kind of proclamation of our so-called, the liberal inclusiveness which we are talking about. But if you see the deep inside, the women are suffering, and in my character it is seen from the eye of that lady which is Vasanti, played by Indira
Right.
Tiwari. And we have two jailbirds who kind of chance meeting on that day, and then we
Right.
see the kind of the evolution, or maybe the journey of these two characters throughout the film, and how they face this very subtly
Right.
and very interestingly, and how they finally reach a point which
Yeah.
will not give out the end of the story, but
Yeah, we're not
they've
supposed
reached
to.
a point. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Just curious, have each of you seen each other's films or no? Right?
No.
No.
You
I have
haven't.
not.
Okay.
I really want
Okay.
to. I'm
All
really
right,
excited.
sure.
Mm.
Just to continue to piggyback on this conversation around class, what's interesting, I just want to talk about the current situation here in India and what this second wave of COVID-19 crisis has stirred up here in India, because I feel like for the first time ever, the middle class is really affected. This virus has spared very few families, and especially middle class families are really getting affected now too. And I feel like for the first time, their bubbles are being burst and their blinders have been taken away, and they're seeing things for what they are. So in this context, how relevant do you feel like your films are for an audience to see in this juncture, especially in India? Considering all your films talk about class and breaking these barriers and structures around class. So this question is for all of you.
No, exactly what I felt. Still one thing is quite evident in this entire. If you see the diagram of the people who are mostly
Yeah.
suffering, of course, virus is not living.
Right.
There's no class distinctions there. But the point is that if you see that, ask anybody, the doctors working on field, the people who are running 24/7 to serve the people, they will say that whatever is coming out as numbers, just multiply them into 4 or 5. And who are suffering the mostly? The people who have no access to any medical system in our country.
Mm-hmm.
Go to the village side. The people are dying under the tree. So if you ask that what is the meaning of our film, in my film in this context, yes, I actually pointing out this one thing, that there are people who always remain excluded from our so-called structural development, what we claim that we are a developing country, we are a growing country. The sense of development is always meant for a certain class. It is always that some people are behind that. They are lagging behind, and they will suffer. They will walk back to the home in a lockdown. They will die under the tree without any sense of treatment or any even small care or concern from the authorities. So one can feel that the class differentiation and also the gender differentiations are an important issue, and that is now like laid bare in front of the people. Absolutely,
Yeah.
that what is how our society operates.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just quickly add to that I think that obviously this virus and this wave of it have changed, I think, and will have a generations long impact on the country. I think as a traumatic event, and it sort of, it is difficult. It's like everything that came before will in some ways be
Right.
different from everything that comes after. The films that come in the aftermath of this are going to have to very directly deal with these issues. If they don't, then they will be irrelevant, I think. And I think any art that comes out of India now must deal with this as well, because it is such a huge impact from everything that we can hear. And I think the one common theme maybe with relation to class that I feel with how people reacted with the vaccine, or with COVID rather, in India initially, was there was a lot of denial. And I think Indian society is having grown up there, knowing a lot of friends of mine who still live there, who I talk to all the time. Denial is a very powerful tool in India, especially when coupled with this kind of staunch, what I call fake national pride. And that what that means is we are not allowed to critically look at ourselves and our society and its faults.
Right.
And when I would talk to people, in India about, hey, I'm writing this movie, and it's about how difficult it is for a woman who is single but who has a dating life that's open and has sexual partners and people know about it, how difficult that is in a city like Bombay still. And many people would actually come back to me and say, what are you talking about? It's perfectly fine. Everyone's dating everyone and no one cares. And it's really modern in Bombay now. And then I would talk to other people, especially single women in their 30s, and they would say, hell no, the rules are terrible for us. They're different, and we're judged all the time. And so that denial, in some ways, there's a linkage between that and how the denial has been with COVID as well. And I hope that people are able to look at this and say, okay, everything's not perfect. And we
and
need,
the sense of,
yeah.
go on, sorry.
No, that's all I was going to say.
Okay. Yeah. The sense of sort of compartmentalizing things, like if it's not really affecting you and you're in this safe bubble, nothing else around you that you hear is going wrong, that can't be true because it's not affecting, yourself. So that's, yeah, I agree. Ashish, did you want to?
Yeah. So I think it's a terrific question, because I think it goes to the heart of this idea of that, can you actually leave these issues out at your doorstep? These issues of distrust and divide. And I think the virus, what your question very intelligently couches it in, is that the virus can be stopped by a door or a window, or a,
Right.
when you have, if you've created a structure where people from the certain class are coming into rich households, or people with means, to just work in their homes, uh, this illusion of sort of saying, well, I can live protected in a society which is deeply divided by constructing these physical barriers or social barriers, is moot. And I think this virus kind of is interesting, because really at the heart of your question is this idea that while the virus here is a tangible manifestation of this issue, and I think it's worth exploring. And one of the things that sort of I try to do in the knot is explore this idea that if we are living in a society where we treat a society at large in a certain way, if there is distrust embedded between us and people who we see not from our class, will that stay at our doorstep, or will it seep into our most intimate relationship?
Right.
Can you be a trustful person with your most intimate relationship if your entire day is spent with this deep class consciousness? And that's sort of the issue. And I think it's interesting that, with your question, that virus is kind of a tangible sort of manifestation of that very question. So, yeah.
And just a segue to what you just said, Ashish, especially when you were talking about these intimate personal relationships. What's interesting with your two protagonists is that, Shirish is quite classist in a way, right? But within his own personal relationship, there's a class distinction.
Exactly.
Could you kind of talk about that a little bit, and why that's important within your film?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. This whole idea that class is seeped into our society at every level, right? I mean, it's in his marriage, as you rightly said, which sort of he's even more aware of than his wife. His wife never sort of, it's never stated. It's all subtle. It's all, in the innuendo. But I think even in the way we speak, right? So in our film, we use 4 different dialects of Hindi, and each dialect is representative of the class, right? I mean, you've got the bureaucrats speaking in chaste Hindi, almost using language as a weapon to show people their place. Like, you can't even understand the Hindi I'm speaking, sort of. And then you've got the sort of the Hindustani, and then you've got Awadhi, and then you've got the English, which is the more educated, convent educated people. So everyone in the film speaks Hindi in a way that is representative of where they come from. The way we consume music, right? We have this one sort of folk theme that runs throughout the film, but depending on whose phone it's playing or whose stereo it's playing, it's bastardized in a different way. But it's so interesting. Like, I find that it's permeated every aspect of our society. It doesn't even need to be actively spoken of, because it's almost like insidious, right? So I think these relationships, and you've sort of, as you pointed out, yeah, I mean, that consciousness of class that he carries with him all day, because doors are shut on him as a struggling businessman, finds its way into his own marriage. And that's exactly the
Right,
aspect
right,
that's most interesting to me, that we can't
right,
leave these things at our doorstep, you know.
right. But what was also interesting about his character is that despite him marrying into this family where he's inherited this business, which you would think as, you know, a big plus, you know, he's now up there, he's now made it, but he's still sort of stuck in this mindset of like upward mobility. I have to do things for my family. I have to make things happen for me. So I think that was quite,
Yeah,
you know, like an
yeah,
important aspect to his character.
absolutely. Ghar Jamai is a big burden to carry in our society, in UP. It's something, because that's where class and patriarchy interact, you know.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the tenant Shushruth, you know, one of the major themes that you kind of explore within these class structures is desire of women, you know, with Mira's character, and then the boy's mother's character, but they're kind of, they manifest in very different ways.
Yeah.
Could you kind of talk about that? And you know, the ways it's manifested is very clear. You know, you can tell that, oh, these two are from very different sort of class backgrounds, economic backgrounds, educational backgrounds. So
Absolutely, yeah. You know, I mean, on the class language thing, I would just add that in our film we do it as well. You know, where every time the boy is hanging out with Mira, who is the woman who has moved in, the tenant, they speak in English. And they listen to the blues and jazz and things like that, which is what, you know, a cool 35-year-old, you know, upper class Mumbai woman might listen to. And then when he goes home, you know, his mom is watching, you know, TV show contest, you know, with the TV soap star, and things like that. And so those worlds are different. And yes, yet at the end of the day, we explore how, you know, in some ways Mira is liberated in a certain way because she is pursuing her desires more openly, her desire to be appreciated for her beauty and to be loved and all of that. And Bharat's mother, who has been a lifelong, you know, middle class housewife and loves her husband, and loves her son, sort of yearns for her, you know, her own, to retain her own femininity, but she has to do it within these very controlled kind of ways. And in her case, it's just, she just, you know, she's sort of moved by this actor on TV, and it inspires her to sort of improve herself with maybe getting a more modern haircut. But even doing that, for her is a big step, and she's worried about, you know, how it might be perceived by her own son, who is judgmental of her. Why does she need to do it? He asks her. You know, what's wrong with?
And at the same time, hoping the husband notices.
Yes. Yeah. And here's the boy, the same boy who is judgmental of his mother's desire to be beautiful, is also drawn extremely to this sexy 35-year-old blues listening woman. But he doesn't put the two together for a while, where he you know, he sort of has a different sort of a different standard for his own mother, which is, oh no, she can't be like that. And that's something that I think Indian men have been taught to do, where, you know, there's the sacred woman, you know, and then there's the woman that is attractive and sexual. So yeah, we definitely play
again
with that.
Compartmentalization. Yeah, absolutely. And in the film The Captive, could you talk about the world of people used as scapegoats for other people's crimes? Someone, you know, it's that world is so mind-boggling to me. Like, I don't know anything about it, so that was a really interesting aspect of the film to kind of discover and see their journeys. And what research went into that?
Yeah, because I think that's a very, you know, common thing in different countries. Like if you see one of those Nouri Bilge Ceylan's film, where this man is also facing the same, he's going to the prison for a politician's crime. So I think that it is also happening in different parts of country, where one man is in the profession of taking other person's guilt and going to the prison. So because I didn't play on that dynamics in the story mostly, because that was
Okay.
the backstory of the main character Chandu. But I
Right.
was mainly playing about this. I tell you very briefly and very that it's a love story. It's a love
Yeah.
story. At one point, it's a kind of a nemesis of two persons going through the different corners of the city, uh, to
Mm-hmm.
in search of something. And slowly, if you see that there is a different shade of how the same class of people exploit each other also. They're both from the same class, frame from that this
Mm-hmm.
man is a criminal and the other lady is a kind of innocent person who got suddenly turned up into a prison. But when they come together, this man is in a continuous search to exploit her, also.
Right.
So I think that there is different realities, different layers playing in the film, and at the same time we see that how they are in the underbelly of the big megalopolis called Kolkata.
Right.
They're moving to the underbelly. They're crawling. They're trying to survive. They're trying to
Right.
exist. They want to kind of grappling with the reality. But at the same time, the another level of dynamic is playing in that underbelly where people are
Right.
eating each other. So I think that
Yeah. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
is not about talking black and white. It is
Sure.
also, everything has that gray element
Grayscale.
which is there. This is also
Mm-hmm.
part of the class divided society. That
Right.
how also the same class is also exploiting each other. That's the
Yeah.
part of the story. So I try to
Right.
follow these two characters very closely,
Mm-hmm.
very
Mm-hmm.
intensely, just follow them, and with these small vignettes of moments, to bring out this small moments of our existence, and the
Sure.
reality which we live in. Yeah.
Right. Right. And talking about your two protagonists with Vasanti's character, her
Mhm.
motivations and intentions in a way are clear throughout the film. She in a way has one goal: she wants to find her husband. But Chandu's character is interesting is that there's a lot of flip flopping, right?
Hmm.
His
Right.
intentions are
Hmm.
constantly. I mean, as an audience member, you're constantly
Hmm. Hmm.
questioning it. We're seeing it. Could you talk about his character, I guess, in comparison to
Yeah,
Vasanti's?
I think that's a very interesting point you have raised, because, of course, Vasanti has one point program, which is to find her family. But
Mm-hmm.
Chandu, suddenly got into this. He's kind of coming in and going out, and feeling that. Uh, Look, I think that he has never felt love in his body. Somebody's taking care of
Right.
him,
Mm-hmm.
and he's getting this softness on the proximity of a woman, and he had a very harsh life, a very difficult life, and he's continuously kind of shifting between two layers, crossing this barrier. Sometimes he's in love, he is feeling,
Right.
for this lady, and sometimes, no, 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 I shouldn't get into this kind of emotional, kind of commitment, rather than I should live my life. So I think that this
Mm-hmm.
fluctuation of an individual, of a person who has faced, and it is a clue to in the film that what his background was and how he lost his mother, mm, and what
Right.
was his mother's profession. So I think those small things come in, that a very difficult life sometimes
Right.
make
Right.
you, continuous sleeping,
Yeah.
always sleeping. You cannot stand in one point, that makes your
Mm-hmm.
character very slippery. Where Vasanti
Sure.
had a family life, so she has a
Yeah. Yeah.
very straightforward, but although that's also
Mm-hmm.
based on patriarchal, model,
Sure. Sure.
within that,
Mm-hmm.
within that society, within that lower class also,
Yeah.
where she finds out the end what happened to her family. But actually,
I
if you
think we
see
shouldn't
that,
disclose.
yeah, we shouldn't discuss that. So I think that,
The
Chandu
important
is
part.
always, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's the important part. So I think that that's the fun. I love to play on those materials of, of the, I will not say they're completely subaltern characters, but they are
Right.
kind of, continuously, fiddling among that. They are in the in the fence. They're living in the
Sure,
fence, and
sure.
they're always
Yeah,
trying to bounce back into the city, and again thrown
yeah.
out. I think that
Right, right,
process is
right.
going on throughout the film.
Yeah, because it's easy to kind of judge their integrity as characters, but as you said, these are characters, people living on the margins. So in a way, they kind of have
Correct.
to do whatever they have to do to survive.
Mm.
Ashish, I wanted to ask you kind of on a lighter note in a way, but I wanted to talk about some small details in your film that really stood out for me. For example, at the surprise birthday party that uh, uh, the male protagonist throws for Gitu, there's a cover in Hindi of Madonna's Material Girl song, and I just love that moment because it's also so symbolic considering the lyrics of the song and just kind of like the conversation that leads up to it. Um, can you talk about like the placement of that song? Did that cover of the song exist, or did you have it made for the
No, no,
film? Was it like an intentional thing?
no. It existed, and we really racked our brains. And I shouldn't take credit for it. It was Ish Raheja, one of my ADs, who came up with the idea. He knew
Right.
the script intimately, and we were discussing what would be appropriate. So it's very interesting, Ashok, that you sort of responded to it. It's the first time someone's actually pointed it out. But yes, it was tongue in cheek. So
Hmm.
absolutely,
Yeah,
and in a way, it's almost pastiche, because it's kitschy, and but
sure,
that's who Shirish is. He's trying to be someone he isn't. And it kind of shows
sure,
in
sure,
different
sure.
ways. It's
Right,
almost
right,
too
right.
on the nose. Yeah.
Well, I mean, but it's a cover in Hindi, so it's
Yeah.
at least somewhat
Yeah. Yeah.
interesting. That's great. And Shishut, in the Tenant, I wanted to, could you kind of dive further deeper into the relationship between Meera and Bharat, considering she's an adult woman and he's a 13-year-old boy, and some of the themes in the film are quite, adult. There's a porn video and all of that. What were sort of the brief notes that you gave both of these actors to kind of take on these roles, especially kind of building the chemistry with each other?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely danced a delicate dance, given that our movie was about sexual issues, but really wasn't a sex kind of film.
Right.
The idea was that, uh, and we were very fortunate to find a boy actor who was at that moment in his own personal life where he was still mama's boy. I remember interviewing him very early on and saying, "So, do you have a girlfriend?" And he was 14 years old, and his reaction was not no or yes. It was like, no, of course not, you know? And I thought, how innocent and sweet. And that really
Yeah.
was kind of where I wanted to find the boy in the movie, where, it's almost bad to have a girlfriend. And yet here comes this beautiful woman, and he just inexplicably, she arouses something in him. He doesn't know what, he doesn't know how to put a name on it. And he's drawn to her, but it's not like he's thinking, oh, I'm going to have sex with her, right? So that was
Right.
very clear, and I didn't have to educate or restrain him or anything. That was who he was. And so I
Right.
basically just told him, like, look, this is just, isn't she a nice woman? Like, don't you think she's cool? And like, all you're doing is you want to be around her. You want her to like you, right? You want her to think you're cool. And because if that's true, then oh my God, like that's the best thing in the world. If a woman like her can think you're cool. And so that's all I pretty much worked with him on. And then it played out in different moments, and we worked on the moments. And with her, I think it was more subtle, but it was the idea that, um, you know, Shamita herself, Shamita Shetty, the actress, we talked a lot about men and the male gaze in India,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
trusting men. And she had a lot of thoughts about that. And I thought, how nice it might be for someone like that to have a boy around who clearly looks up to her, but has not been tainted yet by this male gaze. And there's something calming and sweet about that. Someone who accepts her for who she is, who she can be, whatever she wants to be around. And she's not she may know at some level that he has a crush on her, but people can sort of overcome those things and still develop a fondness for someone.
Right.
And so
Or
we
a
sort
crush,
of, yeah, that's kind of what the
innocent crush.
dance was.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, Shushwat, especially in your film, supporting characters are quite prominent and they play a big role in advancing the narrative. Could you kind of talk about these supporting characters? Because they were, very
Absolutely.
entertaining for sure.
Yeah, no, I have a lot of fun when I'm writing anything from back home, because I feel like, unlike in the West, in India, you are raised truly by a village. I grew up in this
Mhm.
apartment building, and all the uncles and aunties and then the kids that I played cricket with every day, and soccer, and the kids I went to school with, we were in and out of each other's houses. And to tell a story of an isolated nuclear family or something in India, I feel
Yeah.
is just not how my life was. And so I really wanted to bring in this entire village in this building, and it was very easy to do because they were just versions of people that I have known. And then I worked on events, little things like, I mean, there was a woman on my crew, who was on the production crew, who came to shoot one day, and she was crying, and I said, what happened? And she said, we're getting kicked out of our apartment building, me and this other girl, and they were living in Andheri, and they were getting kicked out
Mhm.
because they had had a little party the night before with some beer and cigarettes, and someone had seen their trash, and there were cigarettes in it. And they said, we can't have these girls in our building. Some uncle in the building said that, in a very progressive neighborhood, Nanderi, and they were out on the street. Okay, and these girls were working on our shoot. So we integrated that into the script right away. I said, I want someone to look through her trash. And so who's that going to be? So it's this uncle who's like the chairman of the general body, of the building. And so then, we always wanted to have these uncles and aunties
Right.
and the Bharat's parents and their backstory, because really it's about, for Bharat's parents' backstory, about this couple that is living the traditional life. They had their kid, and it was important in a way to show that there's love there too. It's just sometimes difficult it's not expressed as well in the patriarchal society. It's not easy for a woman to. And so I wanted to build on these side characters to reflect the main story better, because in some ways
Yeah.
it's not just about Bharat and Meera, it's about Bharat and Meera in this entire world.
Yeah. They were definitely an entertaining lot for sure.
Yeah.
And in The Captive, uh, I wanted to ask you, Shuman, at that juncture when they arrive at the religious jatra, in a way, um, was that like a really important moment in the film that in a way sets off something else in the mindset of Chandu's character? I'm trying really hard not to kind of give away plot points or spoilers, because to me that was a very important point in your film, where you think he's doing the right thing, but then he kind of flip flops, but then they take a holy dip. So do you think religion or faith had something to do with his intentions, his change of mind? Could you kind of talk about that?
No, not at all. Religion played no role in Chandu's mind, because I think when he came out of that pond, which was supposed to be
Yeah.
very holy, and then
Mm-hmm.
he made this phone call to the guy to, that I am ready to sell off the girl. So I think that so he is not a human. Maybe he saw a very different girl in that
Mhm.
pond when
Maybe
she
he was talking
yeah.
about somebody else, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so he never saw
But we'll
this
never
girl,
know.
like that who has been in the water, and then she came out in a new sari and everything. What I'm saying,
Mm.
but so
Right.
he's in love again. Now he has this final, but he has to go out and immediately makes a call from inside the mandir only. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that
Right.
religion has nothing to play. It is only the ambiance which was used as Vasanti's faith, that if we go to the mandir, I will get back my family. But Chandu has nothing, because I think that he is
Yeah.
beyond any religious belief in everything.
Sure.
He
Okay.
is falling in love. Simple. He's falling in love.
Yeah. Right. Right. Ashish, I wanted to talk about one other character in your film, the maid at Geeta's house. She was interesting to me because typically when you see maids in films, or even in real life at different people's households, they're these timid, submissive people in a way that listen to whatever the people of the house, the owners say. But she was kind of a person of her own. She would talk back, and she had a mind of her own. She wasn't afraid to kind of voice her opinion. And I was kind of anticipating to see her more in the film. Could you kind of talk about her character?
Yeah, sure. So I think it was interesting, the interaction with Geeta and the maid, because while Geeta sort of lectures her on being stuck in a patriarchy, what Geeta is trying to do is cook this chicken to please her husband when she doesn't even eat non-vegetarian food herself, right? It's this hypocrisy of, saying that why do you listen to your drunk husband when all day you're trying to spend time trying to please your own husband?
Right.
You don't even see where that how what we are saying applies to us as well. But there is this clear power dynamic, and I wanted to bring that, and a lot of it is based on my observations of sort of in what I've observed. But this power dynamic, because the maid knows that she doesn't eat non-vegetarian, there is a certain amount of power she has because she's the only one who can taste this food for Geeta. And so I think she's trying to wrangle that power dynamic to get her husband the job of the driver, and when he doesn't get it, she uses it. So it was like, in our own small way, we try and gain power whichever way we can. It's so I wanted to make that sort of use that as a mechanism to show the interaction of these otherwise people who come from very different worlds, right? They're tied through that chicken dish. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I think we have 4 minutes left before I think two of you have other appointments. So I'll ask one last question for all three of you. I think all of your films kind of came out last year or early this year and have had its premieres. How's it been, considering they all came out during this pandemic? Ashish and Shushrit, both of you are kind of first-time filmmakers. Well, fiction for you, Shushrit. But what's the experience been with respect to screening your films, film festival experience? If all of you could kind of talk about that.
Yeah, it's been hard. I mean, we finished our film a while back, and we were ready for the 2020 festival season, and we had a couple of festivals lined up, and we were ready to go, and then they were in March and April. And initially there was a delay, and then they would just postpone indefinitely, and then they thought they'd come back in the fall in August, and that was a bad idea. And then they ended up 2020 just didn't happen for us. So it was like being in limbo. And I think as a filmmaker, it's deeply painful to spend 5+ years coming up with this thing and making it, and you go through. I don't know what it was like for you guys, but it was a battle to get this film made on every front, and it was the greatest achievement of my life, and then to have to sit quietly and wait and wait and wait and wait for the world, and then tell yourself that you cannot feel sad about it because, hello, you're alive and you're healthy, and look at what's happening in the rest of the world. People are dying and suffering, so you better be quiet about your little film and all of that. So I think it's been it's probably had a psychological impact on me, and it's made me think about very hard before making another one, and all of that. So yeah, I really am dying for people to see this film, and for the world to come back, and especially with what's going on in India, I can't wait for that to end and things to be better. So there's a lot, and yeah, what can you say?
Yeah, I just echo Shushrat. I really can't add much to. He's put it very eloquently. He's been a great representation of an independent filmmaker in this environment. As he said, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. I agree. But just the only thing I'll add to what he's already said is that that's why I feel like I just put in a plug for NYIFF. I mean, I feel very grateful that you guys are soldiering on, because as Shusha said, I mean, it's easy and totally acceptable to say I can't do it, I can't hold the festival. And I think the fact that you guys kept working and like watching all these films and saying we're going to do the festival one way or the other, we are really grateful for it. I mean, honestly, it's a great privilege. Thank you so much.
For me, yeah, 2020 was kind of, I actually, to tell you a little bit of the making of Nazarband, I really edited it twice. The sound mixing was also done twice, the final mix, because I was not happy with the first cut. Then I kind of unpacked the entire material and re-edited it, and then we come to the final version. And again, when the entire thing happened about COVID, and I don't know, then suddenly, I got a mail from Busan that you have been selected for Busan, which kind
Wow.
of, within that huge darkness of mind, and
Right.
that Busan happened, and they had a physical festival.
Right.
So what we did, that they had a post screening Q&A, online Q&A, which was fantastic experience. People are, after the screening, they're in the theater, and I'm talking to them from that big screen. And then NYIFF happened, of course, this is my fourth time to NYIFF, and every time I was there. Only this time I will not be there, but all the last 4 times I'm there, and it's a fantastic atmosphere. When New York is always the place where you want to show your film, because you know why, because it's an amazing audience there. And then after NYIFF, I have a screening at London Indian Film Festival, which is also a physical festival. It will happen in BFI. So I think Nazarband is doing within this green time, this very testing time Nazarband has done. Now we are waiting, because the corridors of OTT platforms are full with big producers, big films. So we're still trying to push our films in that crowd, that if somebody release the film online on some OTTs.
Can I ask the other two filmmakers a quick question? Are you guys pursuing, or have you gotten distribution deals with the digital platforms, or no, you're not pursuing it, or you are pursuing it?
I guess we will probably, but we don't have one.
Yeah. And do you have like a sales agent or a distribution company or anything like that?
Yeah, we have an international sales agent, because the film was in Goes to Cannes selection last year as a work in progress. So we got a sales agent from there.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Sales agent, yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, I wish you luck. And what about you, Suman?
Yeah, I'm trying my best to, as I told, that trying to OTTs, if they pick up the film. And the situation is immensely difficult in India now. It's very difficult. But I hope that somewhere the producer will get back some money, and the people can watch the film in India. That's the most important thing.
Good luck, guys.
Okay, guys. I think on that note, I think we're gonna close and end this discussion, which has been fantastic. Thank you for all three of you for your time. I think Ashish really needs to go now. So again, thank you for being here. It was great chatting with all of you, and good luck with your films.
Thank you.
And keep us posted.
Sure.
Thank you.
And
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Thank you.
And for the rest of you, for the audience, you can find all three of their films and more films at nyiff.moviesaints.com. So just visit the site and purchase and buy whatever films that you're interested in. So thank you again for tuning in.
Thanks.
Thank you.